Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We're starting the week off with a barn burner of a show. My good friend and personal physician, Dr. Matt Andry, is going to be joining us in just a minute to talk about Akkermansia. But I got to tell you, when we did the pre-interview, there's so much more to this than just Akkermansia. As always, when Matt has the time to communicate this type of stuff with people, it's very, very deep, and everyone will learn something new. Even those of you who are experts about Akkermansia. I first heard about Akkermansia in December of 2016. Alisa and I attended the A4M World Congress, where Dr. Matt was lecturing a group of physicians. And his lecture was because metformin was becoming a very popular potential senolytic drug. And we already know that it has the ability to correct metabolically broken people. And Dr. Andry discovered the Akkermansia link, that Akkermansia is upregulated, its population is upregulated in people who use metformin. He connected all the dots and he said, look, it's quite possible that that metformin works because of Akkermansia. Because don't forget, they still don't know how metformin works. Think about that. And Matt found a very, very plausible theory, and these doctors were listening. And that was in 2016, 7 years. I know that there are some health gurus out there that claim to be the ones that discovered Akkermansia 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and now we have a slew of companies making the probiotic supplement, and we're going to talk about that too. But there's so much more to this story. Before we get started, I have to thank my title sponsor. That's Legendary Foods. Legendary Foods improved on the taste, the Pop-Tart. They took the Pop-Tart and they got rid of everything that's wrong with it and made it taste better. Legendary Foods, the maker of the tasty pastries, less than 1 gram of sugar, 20 grams of high-quality dairy protein, 4 to 5 net carbs, but you'll eat them because they're delicious. They taste amazing. In fact, your children will eat them. And you can't get your kids to eat anything that's healthy unless it tastes like it's not healthy. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10 to save 10% off. I promise you, if you eat one, you will always have them in your home thereafter. And now, without further delay, let me get Matt on here. It's been a while since you've been on the show, huh, Matt?
Yes, it has. It's wonderful to be back.
Yes, and and that day in 2016, I actually have a picture of us. I'm going to show the audience. This was us at Il Molino over by Caesar's Palace. We had just finished an amazing meal, a couple bottles of fantastic wine.
Amazing.
And, so that's
I'm looking like I need my Akkermansia there for sure.
No, I caught you when you the waiter got you when you were blinking. That's and somebody always gets caught blinking in a picture, so it was right that time. So you went to Las Vegas and spoke.
Yep.
About Akkermansia, and none of the doctors knew anything about it before you started talking. In fact, none of us knew anything about Akkermansia before you introduced it to the world. How did you discover it back then? What was it?
Sure, that's a great question. And actually, I mean, most of the research that I was reading and sharing with people was 2 to 3 years old when I did that. Right. So I'm standing on the shoulders of other giants. It wasn't me. Right. But the story really came about from just being a bariatric doctor, and I'm a nerd, and so one of the things that you and I share very in common is if we're not learning how stuff works, we're not interested.
Right.
And so we've had all these treatments, and we had a lot of protocols that were really helping people lose weight and helping people with diabetes and so forth. But I was trying to understand why, what. And in particular, one of the tools that that I've used very much is Metformin. In fact, in our office, we kind of joke, we'll say if you skip a meal and get lightheaded, dizzy, or hangry, or if you eat a big lunch and pass out, we're going to try to put you on Metformin.
Right.
And Metformin is not a wonder drug. It has its downsides, its effect on mTOR, which you've talked about and shared with people a lot. It's just that most of the patients that I see, they're so metabolically deranged that it's worth it, at least for a time, to create an imbalance for a greater future balance.
Right.
But one of the, as I began to study Metformin, most of the proposed mechanisms of how it works just didn't explain what we saw clinically. So as we looked for other, potential causes, one of the things I ran across was the shifts in gut flora. And then as I started to understand that most of it had to do with research that had already been done on Akkermansia Muciniphila, which is a bacteria that eats mucin. Mucin is basically mucus. Think of that. It's a protein mucus that's in every bit of the lining of your gut from mouth to the other end. And the more of that you make, in a way, the healthier your gut lining is. Well, when you when you have this bacteria in it that eats it, it causes your gut to make more of it. So, and Akkermansia is supposed to be around 3-4% of the bacteria that are in our gut, but a lot of the ways that we live in Western society just eliminate it. Well, and so I said, well, gosh, it'd be nice if we had a probiotic that could do it, but it's an anaerobe. The instant it hits oxygen, it dies. So they looked at what other ways you can do it, and there were basically two. You can take Metformin, which will increase the counts of Akkermansia about 20-fold, or you can take prebiotics that contain a lot of oligofructose. Oligofructose is a pretty good substrate for Akkermansia, and it can grow on that. And that's really what Metformin does. It literally eats part of the Metformin and helps it grow. And then so when we kind of figured out that was, at least in some way, in some people, the way Metformin was working, we thought maybe in a lot of people, it's even the primary way. And what that bacteria and what this chemistry and this endocrinology is teaching us about weight and diabetes is just tremendous. And it's not a stretch to say that we're on the verge, as we're understanding this hormonal setup around metabolism. This is going to be to diabetes and obesity what neurotransmitter theory was to depression in the 80s. Mm-hmm. We're going to have a different culture. Our children are going to grow up in a world where they're not afraid of diabetes and obesity like we are. It's kind of exciting.
Do you think that in the face of a diet that traditionally produces insulin resistance, Akkermansia can keep people from developing insulin resistance?
Well, certainly the animal studies would suggest that. There are many animal studies that show that if you take a group of rats or mice and you inject their guts with really high levels of Akkermansia, you can feed them Snickers and Mountain Dew, and they don't gain weight and they never get diabetes. But conversely, if you kill the Akkermansia in their gut selectively, then no matter what you feed them, even if you starve them, they still develop diabetes. So we know that it is very, very central to our protection from metabolic disease to have a good amount of those in there. So the way I say it, it's like a lot of things, Carl. It is necessary. It may not be sufficient to give all the changes that you need to get healthy yourself.
Interesting. So one of the things that you just taught me minutes ago is that Akkermansia produces glucagon-like peptide, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And GLP-1 is all the rage right now. I mean, people are injecting it even when they don't have insulin resistance to lose weight.
Yep. Well, we're really, again, in the same way that once we had Prozac, let's go back to the early 80s. And then what the value, of course, was Prozac did help a lot of people. That's no question. But even bigger was the what it taught us about our own physiology, what it taught us about mood, what it taught us about neurotransmitters and the way that influences the way we think, act, feel, respond to stuff. And then we developed other treatments that were based on that understanding that has given us the whole panoply we have of antidepressants and mood-directed medicines now, which I'm not here to say that those are all great and wonderful. Sometimes they're misused, but many people around this planet can point to the fact that these meds save their life. So it's like anything else. None of these treatments, even Akkermansia, is a perfect thing for everybody. But for many people, if you are out of balance because you don't have this, it can make a potentially significant improvement in your metabolic health by putting it back.
Where does Akkermansia live? It doesn't live in the stomach, which is a lot of people think these things live in the stomach. In fact, if your stomach is inhabited by microbes, that's considered the beginning of SIBO, right?
Yeah.
You should have such a low pH, such an acidic pH level that things can't live in your stomach, right?
Right. Well, let's talk about just gut biome just a second in itself. I mean, we've only identified 10% or so of the bacteria that even live in our gut. 9 out of 10 that are down there, we ain't even named them, and we have no clue what they are, what they do, or how they got there. So we're all acting like big experts around this field, and there aren't any, because we're too early in the process of even understanding what a lot of these bacteria species do. But one of the things that's very true about Western medicine in general, and you and I have talked about this as well, is that basically all of our understanding of stuff is driven by therapeutics. The only reason people check their cholesterol is because we've got a group of medicines out there, statins, to do something to them.
Right.
When people take their A1C is that they've got medicines that if we put you on them, it can lower your A1C, and we can use that as a metric. They're metrics. I mean, that's what's important is your general overall health. And the reason that Akkermansia is so helpful is because it does increase one of the reasons it's so important is it increases our incretin output. It actually makes a protein called P9, and P9 causes our cells to produce GLP-1. And GLP-1 is one of 2 incretin hormones, GLP-1 and GIP, that are absolutely central to metabolic control of our blood sugar and our metabolism and our weight. And if you do not have these hormones working, you're going to struggle with potentially obesity and potentially with diabetes. I mean, we're getting to the point now that it's pretty much fair to say that a person's ability or inability to lose weight is going to be a function of their circulating insulin level. And the lower your incretins are, the higher your insulin is. And the more insulin you have around, you have a nuclear hormone actively telling every fat cell in your body to get bigger. It really doesn't matter what you do with your energy balance if that's there. It's a trump card. Just like testosterone trumps everything else, insulin's going to trump your weight loss efforts if it's up. And putting this bacteria back in there, and at least taking metformin and some of these other therapies we have now, lowering insulin is what lets us lose weight.
So, but back to the original question, where does Akkermansia live? Does it live in the small intestine, the large intestine, the colon? Because the reason I ask is because a supplement's really delivering it where it's supposed to be.
Right. There's a lot of Akkermansia in the lower parts of the small intestine and in the colon is where the majority of it is. And you're right that one of the challenges is how do you make a probiotic that doesn't get all the bacteria just chewed up by the very, very low pH in the stomach with all the stomach acid. And then the other challenge you have with this one is you have to get one that can survive the oxygen environment of being in a pill and being in a bottle and even there in your stomach a little bit. Mm-hmm. So, and that has been a work literally for years to try to get formulations that will give a viable population in the right part of the gut.
Now, I know that a lot of probiotics fall prey to this phenomenon, not the anaerobe, but getting to where they belong. And supplement companies just figure, well, we'll just put 1 trillion CFUs and maybe a half a dozen will end up where they were supposed to be, and the rest of them you'll just poop out.
Right.
You think that's a logical approach?
I think probably what happens is they all die. I mean, it's no harder for your stomach to kill, 3 trillion than 3 trillion minus 12.
Right.
But probably those breakdown products of all those parts of bacterial bodies that are there can be used by bacteria that are down in the gut, so that's one of the theories is that we sort of give a bunch of the building blocks to the bacteria, and that even if the stomach chews them up, that they can still use those for growth. But it is very true. We are not delivering a lot of viable bacteria to these. So, acid protected formulations, which are often encapsulated, or put into a spore form are the way we try to survive that.
So the spore is a phenomenon that's fascinating. I learned this when I did my first show about SIBO.
Yeah.
What happens is people change their diet and they eliminate the symptoms of SIBO and they think that they fixed it. But what they did was they forced those microbes to become spores, suspended animation, and they can stay like that indefinitely.
For
as soon as you reintroduce
years, literally.
Yeah. And so as soon as you reintroduce the foods that feed them, they go, oh, food. They wake up and they become active again.
Yep.
So with that being the case, is it possible to enterically coat this microbe and give it a better chance of getting where it belongs?
Yep, and that's what people are clearly doing. I mean, there's been a rush of different products that have been out lately, and they all claim different. We have a patent for this. We have a patent for this. They usually try to patent the strain of Akkermansia that they've got, which there's value in that. But the big key is going to be how many of these will actually improve the counts in your own gut. And those are things that we just don't know yet. And I would love to. And as we go, some of these companies will start doing studies like that. And those are the ones that we're probably going to be recommending for our patients, because I do think that replacing this bacteria is going to be an important and helpful part of a general good metabolic health program.
So theoretically, if you took these microbes, you encapsulated them in an enterically coated capsule, you produced them in an oxygen-free environment, you stored them in individually packaged, like blister packs filled with nitrogen.
Yeah.
To displace oxygen.
Yeah.
What's that?
They freeze dry them. So,
yeah. But do they need food? Are they spored at that time, or are they still alive and functioning?
Actually, Carl, I don't know the answer to that. And it probably is a bit strain dependent. There's probably some different strains that have a little different ways they do that than others. And every day it seems like somebody's coming out with their own particular strain that does something, new and fancy. At the very least, I don't know which of these are going to come out to be really good, options for people or not. I'm just so excited they're working on it, because this is a direct, very gentle, natural way of simply reestablishing a balance that was our birthright. This was something that we needed to live, that our Western way of living has beat out of us.
Do we know if there's Akkermansia in breast milk, human breast milk?
So there's Akkermansia is again, it lives on the right under the surface of your gut lining. So it's probably not in milk, but it is probably, just getting the good bacteria off the surface of mom's skin. We don't just need Akkermansia, because if you had Akkermansia in isolation, it needs the other bacteria to make the products that it lives on too. So it's about, there are probably people that taking Akkermansia could even make them worse if it changes some balance in their gut to the negative. What's going to be important is that as you add these, you try it for a period of time and then reassess how your metabolic health seems and your GI health.
One of the foods that is touted as being friendly and helping to build Akkermansia is apple. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was true. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Keeps coming back.
As I told you, and we talked a little bit before, that the soluble fiber that's in an apple, that pectin, is really, really handy. And you're right that as many of us are going to more low carb diets, we're questioning how much fiber do we actually need. And I think especially if you're on a low carb diet, there is certain advantage to the apple pectin, not just because it's a very good substrate for Akkermansia, but because that little bit of bulk does help keep your gut moving enough to keep your hormones from recirculating too much. People that go a week without bowel movement, they get some really hormonal imbalances because their hormones are coming out of the fecal matter back into their bloodstream. So you want to keep that moving. Ideally, you want
talk about that in women. When women go through menopause, they tend to become constipated. Talk about that phenomenon.
Very commonly. I mean, what really, a lot of the thoughts out there about estrogen being dangerous, it's not too much estrogen. It's not enough progesterone to balance the estrogen that we have. And estrogen is made in our fat tissue, but our fat tissue does not make progesterone to balance it. So almost any women out there with carrying extra body weight has at least the potential to be a little bit progesterone deficient. If you're progesterone deficient, you're typically low thyroid, because progesterone turns on the thyroid gland. That's why we have women check their basal body temperature when they want to get pregnant. But if you're low progesterone, your thyroid gets low. What's one of the symptoms of low thyroid? Constipation. So then you get more constipated. And then especially if you're on, say, an oral estrogen, that's a big dose. We got to give you 10 times the amount you actually need to let it survive the liver. But when that sits in your gut and your bowels don't move, that gets recirculated from the fecal material into the bloodstream. And so your estrogen population just goes up and up and up with no progesterone to go with it. And that is a chance of causing some danger to your health with hormone imbalance.
Interesting. Talk more about Incretin. Is that how you pronounce it?
Incretins. Yeah. This is going to be the buzzword. We will be doing work on Incretins for the next decade plus. regarding metabolic health, disease, obesity, and then everything that's connected to that, which at this point, that are now at Harvard, they list over 400 health conditions that are associated with obesity. So there's almost no chronic health conditions that aren't part of our just obese, population, or part of our obese picture. So ask me that again, Carl. What was that question?
Well, just talk more about incretin.
Yeah. So the incretins, basically incretin is a shortened word that basically means insulin producing hormone. So what they are, it was fascinating how this was discovered. I know you got a break coming up.
No. We got 8 minutes.
Okay, cool. So there was this group of physiologists in the 80s, and they were studying insulin. And what they knew is if they injected a certain amount of glucose IV, that they could then in a few minutes measure insulin levels going up in that person in their bloodstream. And those guys were kind of a lot like my patients are. And what I mean by that is that if I got patients that are a little sick, they got a little sinus infection, they all want a Z-Pack. Great. But if they got a really bad sinus infection and they're trying to leave for Florida on vacation in the morning, they all want a shot of Rocephin because we all believe that something parenteral, a shot or an IV, is going to work better than something oral. Well, to these guys' great surprise, when they gave the same amount of glucose orally that they gave IV, they got a tremendously bigger insulin response. So that told them that when food hits the gut, something is released that helps us make insulin. And that led to the discovery of the incretin GIP, and then subsequently to the second incretin, which is GLP-1. And there are now 2 that we've described. There are probably other species of ones that are related, but those are the 2 primary incretins. But incretin-based therapies will be the place that we go over the next several years to treat and potentially cure diabetes and obesity. And these treatments are working. We are seeing some of these new therapies in the medical world getting levels of weight loss that are comparable to what we see with bariatric surgery without getting cut on. And it's in your and my wheelhouse, Carl. It's HRT. We're just putting back hormones that are supposed to be there. It's so much fun. It's every day going to work is fun right now because of that.
So we've always thought women are complex. They need bias, they need progesterone, they need testosterone, a little DHEA, a little pregnenolone. But men, just give them a shot of testosterone. That's not true, is it?
It's not true.
I mean, men need more than just testosterone, right?
That's right. But the endocrine glands, they sort of live somewhere between our physical body and our spirit. I mean, they're very, very, very potent ways to make changes in the body. And, it sounds even sexist to say it, but women's systems do tend to require more individual balancing of those hormones, whereas most guys are kind of blunt instruments, and that our levels of estrogen, progesterone, and so forth typically don't have a big clinical effect on us. Simply our testosterone level and how much of that versus how much our body wants is going to determine most of what we do. With women's systems, you can't get away with that. All 3 of those hormones have to be balanced, and you typically can't balance them without bouncing non-hormonal things at the same time.
Okay, so you just stuck your fork in something that bugs me. Okay, so there are phases of the menstrual cycle, right? You get the luteal phase, the follicular phase. Yep. Okay. If you were putting a woman, a postmenopausal woman on HRT, and you had to park her in one of those phases, where would you park her?
Well, in a way, it would depend on some other things. And I wouldn't particularly try to park her at any one of those phases, because even if our ovaries are done, that doesn't mean our hypothalamus and our pituitary gland aren't cycling. So we're still getting change. We eventually your FSH goes up and stays up because you're not making enough estrogen. But the part of your hypothalamus still has a little bit of cycling. And many are the women who find that they still have symptoms of, say, PMS, even after they've had a hysterectomy. Well, why? Because that's not the only tissue that they have in their body that's cycling. So when I'm replacing estrogen, basically what I try to do is use as little of a dose as it takes, because estrogen is literally the most potent molecule in the human body. I mean, we measure the amounts in picograms, billionths of a gram. It's literally 100 times more potent than testosterone. So tiny, tiny amounts are plenty. And so I'm not trying to get her to a particular phase. What I'm treating for usually is to try to allay symptoms, first off, because that tells me that it's at least getting in her system and doing something. Second, then I'm trying to improve or reduce any risk for major health issues. So that's heart disease, osteoporosis, diabetes, and so forth. So the question of where to be, in what phase is sort of related to how much of a blood level do you want. But I usually shoot for a postmenopausal blood level of somewhere between 150 and 250.
Yeah, and that's sensible. And in fact, I've discovered that many doctors don't check FSH, and FSH is a feedback hormone that tells you when you've given a woman the right amount, like when you've hit with the sweet spot for her, right?
It's analogous to TSH in thyroid.
Right.
The reason we check TSH a lot, and a lot of docs don't even check T4, it's not because T4 is invalid, it's that it's variable. If you take a Synthroid right now, your T4 is going to change 50% in the next 24 hours. So your blood level of T4 is going to vary very fast. TSH is useful because it's more stable. Well, FSH is a lot more stable than estrogen, and so that's why we can check it. But you're right, a lot of docs don't check it. Part of the reason, they don't know how to interpret it.
Right. But really, that's how you know when that woman is where she needs to be estrogen-wise, right?
It's a very helpful tool. I have many women who have an FSH that's still out of range that would suggest they need more, but I don't chase it. If her symptoms are down, if her bones are looking healthy, if her other metabolic parameters are looking good, I'm going to let the FSH run out of range as long as she's feeling, as long as we have the clinical effects we want.
And you know what's another one that doctors don't use very much? And that is, oh God, isn't that funny? I was just thinking about it. So when doctors give vitamin D3, they're supposed to look at parathyroid hormone, because when parathyroid hormone drops, then you're at your sweet spot of vitamin D. But nobody does that. They just say, 50,000 IUs a week. That's it. You're done.
Right. We do a lot of things with very blunt instruments. As I said before, so much of our thinking in medicine is driven by therapeutics, and that's neither good nor bad. It's just that it takes money to educate, and the only people making money are the ones who come up with products. So that's why products drive our understanding of all these conditions. But the hope is that it's not just going to be the pharmaceutical companies from now on who do that. It's going to be our supplement companies that also provide great hypotheses that we can go out and study. And that's really what's happened with Akkermansia. Took 10 years, but now we've gone from something that was just barely recognized to now something that has therapeutically the chance to help people's health. That's really cool.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. If you live in the area, driving distance of Indiana, Dr. Andry can be, well, no, you're probably, are you still taking patients?
We've had to actually hold back on that, Carl. And part of that is I think we do a good job, but part of it is just there's been a real crisis in so many communities of people leaving medicine. So, we have a lot of people that they've ever seen us for anything are kind of begging us to come by. So we're pretty full, but give us a call still. We've got my wife sees patients and she does a great job.
Andry Medical Services. They're in Bloomington, Indiana. It's a beautiful city. Go up there, spend the day, let Dr. Matt prod you and look at your labs. And if you get in, you're lucky. I'm going to tell you should try to get in. Let's put it that way. Cry a little bit when you call. All right, look, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Stay with us. Please don't leave. And don't forget, share the show. You never know who you're going to help. Share the show. There are lots of concerns about food supply today. That's why you need White Oak Pastures. White Oak Pastures will deliver food right to your doorstep. You don't even have to go out and be disappointed by shopping in grocery stores. The finest beef, pork, lamb, duck, and more can be found at White Oak Pastures. And now they even have seafood. And best of all, White Oak Pastures has a negative carbon footprint, which means that you don't have to feel guilty for eating your ribeye. Go to shrnetwork.biz/whiteoak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 15% off. Never before has a product been so appropriately named as Botanic Tonics Feel Free. This plant-based elixir combines a variety of different effective compounds, all from raw plant materials that at different doses provide you with completely different experiences. A third of a bottle puts you in the zone and makes you very focused and is ideal for a non-stimulating pre-workout. It also has a mild analgesic effect for us older lifters who have soreness and little pains and aches that keep us from training as ferociously as we want. A half a bottle will create a mild euphoric effect that will allow you to forego consuming alcohol, but still be socially lubricated and have fun. I have never had a product deliver on its name the way Botanic Tonic's Feel Free does, and I won't ever be without it, and you shouldn't either. Go to shrnetwork.biz/feelfree and use the code SHR40 for 40% off your first order. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. GHKCU is one of the most effective peptides for rebuilding more youthful skin, reversing skin damage, diminishing wrinkles, and tightening loose skin. I personally use Restoracell with GHKCU every day. It's making an undeniable difference in the quality of my skin. Restoracell is fantastic for all types of skin. Now you can order Restoracell and save 25% when you use the code SHR25. That's SHR25. While you may be diligent in your workouts and your diet, don't neglect what people see first and foremost, and that's your skin. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use code SHR25 today. Never before has a product been so appropriate.
This is the Superhuman Channel. Evolution just got kicked up a notch.
I'm reading emails. I'm trying to run commercials. I will say this. When Gunleash launches, I won't miss this part. I love doing the interviews, but it's all the other distractions. It's amazing.
Totally.
Okay. So Akkermansia appears to have a beneficial effect on inflammation. How does it do that?
Yeah, so one of the thoughts about that is because the Akkermansia basically induces the lining of our gut to make a lot more mucin, it firms up basically how good our gut barrier is. So our tight junctions, which is the space between our gut cells, those get tighter. There's less partially digested food that gets into the bloodstream, and very importantly, less lipopolysaccharide. So LPS is one of the great sort of if you had a list of bad guys for your health, that's one of them. That's sort of the Darth Vader. LPS it basically just induces a low grade chronic inflammation, and the more LPS you have, the more inflamed you are. So because Akkermansia improves the integrity of the gut barrier, LPS drops and inflammation drops with it.
And so we hear a lot about leaky gut. And people who have leaky gut tend to have autoimmune disorders. So this fits nicely with that particular group.
Oh, yeah. And again, the theory there, we believe what happens is that, if you have a good, healthy population of bacteria in your gut, you're efficiently and effectively fully breaking down your food. And when that happens, when you get to the part of the gut that's there for absorption, then you're absorbing, disaccharides and triglycerides and amino acids. But if your digestion is imperfect, for example, if you have hypochlorhydria, you don't make enough stomach acid, then instead you don't get those fully broken down pieces of nutrient. You get little bits of broccoli, little bits of chicken. And they're complex enough that the body will mount an immune response to them, but they're simple enough that a lot of it will cross-react with your own tissue. And that's why we think autoimmune disease and leaky gut go together. So this has the potential, doing anything to improve the integrity of your gut should help insulate you from the gut contributing to autoimmune disease.
Okay. Sorry, let me drink some.
I love it. The milk jug.
I gotta get a gallon in. So I used to be one of those people that when somebody said sugar was addictive, I'm sorry, I would say, no, it's not, because true addiction, a hallmark of true addiction is rewiring the brain.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
It's all good.
My gut needs some work. I'm going to start taking Akkermansia. Whenever people said, oh, bread is addictive, I'd say no. Real addiction requires collateral changes to the area of the brain that's responsible for that compound effect: nicotine, alcohol, opioids. That's true physical addiction.
Yep.
But I'm starting to, and I always say, oh, well, that's just when you want something really bad and you don't have the self-control to put it off. But I'm starting to rethink this. I'm actually starting, because I've experimented with things like LL37. I've helped a few people literally who were stone cold alcoholics stop drinking.
That's
LL37 prunes the microbes in your gut.
Yep.
And the microbes, they say, feed me. Like I had to give up coffee.
Yep.
It was so hard. Every time I drove past a Starbucks, my brain said, oh, let's go get a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
That's because of the microbes in my gut making chemicals that travel up to my brain like that and create that urge. So I'm starting to rethink.
You're dead right. I've been accused for years of, I've been accused for years. Dr. Andry, you just take patients off the hook. And my answer was never, defending it. It was always, well, they're dying on the hook. So what?
Right. Right.
Right. As I've been a bariatric doc for 20 years. And so trying to get people skinny means that I daily wade into the breach as far as how much of this is behavioral versus how much is chemical. And I'm very, 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 very much in the side of chemical, because I've seen person after person after person go from being an incalcitrant, hopeless, non-compliant person to effortlessly losing weight and sticking on whatever diet we have just when we got their chemistry straight.
Right.
So you're right that it's about the way we use our terms. So addiction, a lot of people use the term addiction when what they mean is dependence.
Right.
I am dependent upon a bit of olmesartan for my blood pressure, but I am not addicted to it. Addiction is doing unhealthy behaviors to yourself to get something you're dependent on. But a lot of people are, I will say, to a degree, dependent upon bread or sweets or carbs because they've got a momentum going. They've got an insulin spike, and then their sugar crashes, and then they get hungry again and they eat again, and they just ride this back and roller coaster all day. So they are dependent on it. That doesn't mean that they should be, or we can't change it. But at their state, that may be true. But it's amazing. I mean, and one thing I want to talk about it, because it is real, and it's worth another show at some point. This new medication that is out for Lilly, Mounjaro, it's been all over the news. It's on the Today Show, Good Morning America, because the top line billing, the top dose of this caused 54 pounds of weight loss in an obese population. Almost everybody got down to near normal, or normal blood sugars and near normal weights. Again, because we're putting back hormones that belong there. And so that incretin story is very much a part of this. It's not that, we're using this to artificially make people have a lower appetite. It's that their appetite is artificially elevated because of the imbalances that have been caused by the way we live. In particular, sleep trouble.
What, sleep trouble, you said?
Oh, yeah. Well, here's the reason. The first thing that goes wrong with us as far as obesity and diabetes is insulin resistance. That's the first arrow, first thing that happens. Why does that happen? Well, partly it happens because there are times that our body actually wants to be insulin resistant. You need to be insulin resistant during the night. Otherwise, you're going to have to wake up every hour and eat something. So in order to stay asleep for 8 hours, what the body does is it tunes down how much your insulin receptors respond to your insulin. Then what's supposed to happen is you sleep well through the night, and during the night, your hypothalamus is running, the suprachiasmatic nucleus is running on norepinephrine and serotonin, and that makes you stay in an insulin-resistant state. Then in the morning, when light hits your retina, you're supposed to get a burst of dopamine that turns on your insulin sensitivity. A full 50% of a human's daily insulin sensitivity is simply a function of how they slept and how they woke up. Mm-hmm. If you didn't sleep well, if you're apneic, if you work nights, it's like you never pull the bowstring and you have nothing to let go. So you stay insulin resistant 24/7. You do that month after month after month, you end up with, toward the diabetes train.
So changing the diversity and the population of the microbiome seems to be the answer for a lot of things today when we look at metabolically broken people.
Yeah.
right?
And there are probably a lot of treatments that are currently working for people that we've got some guess of how they work, and what they're really doing is affecting our gut biome.
In fact, I just did a show with a scientist from UC Irvine about rhodiola rosea, and it makes insulin receptors more sensitive.
Yeah.
And and they're saying that this could be another arrow in the quiver.
Yep.
For treating people with blood sugar problems. But interestingly enough, like other things that seem to help blood sugar levels, it affects the microbiome and makes it healthier.
Yep. That population is dynamic. It's always changing, and it's changing in response to our environment and largely to what we're eating. And most of us do eat it. We're eating all kinds of things that are poisonous to our good bacteria. Sugar alcohols are one of the biggest ones that do that.
Really?
Yeah. And that's not that you can't eat them. It's just that if you're having them, know the effects of what you're having on your biome, as best you can, and try to balance it. And your symptoms, GI wise, can give you clues to that. So yeah, that being again, when we're so long on ignorance, as I like to put it, toward the biome as we are now, hedge your bet. Do a little of everything. Take this one for a while. I tell people, switch it up. Don't just stick with one and go with it. To me, SIBO is not, an overgrowth. It's an overgrowth due to an imbalance from an undergrowth of other ones that should be competing with it. So it's about keeping a healthy ecology there, and know that we are seeing through a glass darkly. There's nothing that we're doing is just a slam dunk. What's important is if the concept sounds right, give it a try. Give it a try for a couple months and see if your body shifts in the way you do things. But what can happen with Akkermansia is, because it induces this GLP-1, you could find that your appetite decreases some. You could find that your tastes change, that it is easier for you to eat foods that you kind of knew you should but never really wanted. You may start digging fruit and vegetables more. That happens because these bacteria, they've evolved over billions of years.
Well, they create cravings. That's my point. Like with the coffee, it's like they say, feed me. I want that. And you go and get it for them and put it in your mouth.
So let's just do it on purpose.
That's fascinating. We have to take a last commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk about, do you know who Dr. Sean Baker is? The fellow who's been driving the carnivore diet for about the past 6
I
or 7
know
years.
of Dr. Baker, and I certainly know about the carnivore diet. Yeah.
I want to talk about that because there's something interesting about the carnivore diet and Akkermansia that we're going to talk about when we come back. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of Dr. Matt Andry. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/mypillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
There are lots of concerns about food supply today. That's why you need White Oak Pastures. White Oak Pastures will deliver food right to your doorstep. You don't even have to go out and be disappointed by shopping in grocery stores. The finest beef, pork, lamb, duck, and more can be found at White Oak Pastures. And now they even have seafood. And best of all, White Oak Pastures has a negative carbon footprint, which means that you don't have to feel guilty for eating your ribeye. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 15% off. P3OM from Bioptimizers is a patented prebiotic and probiotic supplement with Lactobacillus plantarum OM. It has now been upgraded to P3OM 2.0 with the addition of a superfood formulation that makes it 2 times stronger, as well as optimizes L. plantarum's strength. So it's more powerful than ever, which means that not only will it help you completely digest all animal proteins, it also reduces cortisol, causes deep relaxation and better sleep, and reduces stress. Go to shrnetwork.biz/P3-OM today and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
Welcome back. You know, I ate peanuts before the show, and I'm having an allergic reaction to them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like an anaphylactic shock allergic. I never eat peanuts. Alisa eats them. She loves peanuts and peanut butter, and I normally don't eat them. But I wanted a snack. I got 2 pork loin chops and broccoli warming up right now in my Hot Logic. And I thought, well, let me go get a bag of peanuts, just something to snack. And I like 10 minutes later, I was like, my head is draining, my throat is draining, I'm coughing.
Yeah.
I must be allergic to them, and I never knew it.
Immune response for sure. Yeah. Yeah, allergies are interesting. I think that there's really a principle that the more inflamed we are, the more we react to a lot of stuff that we a lot of times wouldn't. And so I think it's just if I'm reacting to stuff in my environment, I often will go back to gut and say, man, I should probably try to get my gut wall a little bit healthier, because I think that's the most important place that we keep our barrier from the outside world.
So you know what I'm experimenting, and then we'll get back on the subject. I have some DMSO that we used in a product that I was involved, that Primal D, the spray vitamin.
Yeah.
And it's made by Gaylord Pharmaceuticals, and it's the only DMSO that is approved by the FDA for cancer drug delivery.
Okay.
And so, as you know, one time you said to me when you did an exam, and you said, well, I said, I'm starting to get, my legs are getting a little tingly and numb. And you says, yeah, eventually we all turn to wood. Do you remember saying that to me? Yeah, he goes, when you said, when we get older, we all turn to wood. And I thought it was really funny. It was like, like I could just see myself like that old wooden guy, sitting on the pier.
It's funny when it's not you.
Yeah, I know. No, but it was still funny. Well, I've gotten rid of a lot of it. And it's fun, and I didn't want to talk about it yet because I actually developed a really wicked case below the ankles where my feet didn't want to flex properly, and it was causing me some real pain and problems. And then I have that one foot that you haven't seen that I had the 2 surgeries on in 2019 that looks like somebody else's foot now. So out of the blue, I had this DMSO, and I thought, I wonder what would happen if I start putting DMSO on my legs.
Yeah.
My legs are getting better. And so I hypothesized that I have, because that's why I texted you to ask you about the chelating agents and stuff like that. I think I have a mold problem.
It is very easy to get. I mean, especially the part of the country that we live in, we're certainly exposed to that constantly. And if our immune system is really good and well-funded and not otherwise occupied, a lot of people, that's not a problem. But if your immune system is kind of taxed a little bit already, then it can be, a little bit overwhelming to your system to meet any of those challengers, be it an allergen or just a toxin or something that's irritating to your, something that you're sensitive to.
Well, so here's my theory. This phenomenon that I have is akin to when you were a kid and you sat on your leg to watch a really good movie, and then after the movie was over, you stood up and your leg was asleep.
Yeah.
So when your leg is asleep, first it's numb, but as the blood starts to flow, it gets burns, it stings, it hurts, and then after that, it comes out of it.
Yeah.
And the sensation that I had in my legs was akin to that burn sting, so I kept thinking, this is blood flow. In fact, you wanted to send me, you wanted it, and I didn't go, but you wanted to send me for like a vascular workup.
Yeah.
What do they do? MRI, I guess it was, or something like that.
ABRs, they just look at the anchiobrachial index.
Yeah. And so I think what's happened is blood flow is diminished. Those nerves are half falling asleep all the time. What do they call that? Hyperalgesia.
Yeah.
Right. And so I started painting DMSO on because it's a powerful antifungal.
Very much.
But it's also does, you know what they discovered about, so they use DMSO to deliver antifungal drugs.
Yeah.
But then they showed that the DMSO worked by itself without the dibutyltin.
Just as a carrier vehicle, yeah. And it's very, very forgiving. I mean, you can take a wad of that without hurting anything.
Well, and you can take 10 grams a kilogram and it's still not toxic.
Yeah,
orally.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about the Gaylord is it doesn't have the odor.
That's good.
Yeah, because cancer patients don't want to stink plus die.
No.
So,
Right.
I started painting it, and holy crap, my legs feel different. And I'm just going to keep working it. But,
Love it.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I'm always trying something. Like I experiment on myself. I'd go to jail if I was a doctor because I'd be doing this. But anyway, let's get back on track. So the interesting thing about the carnivore diet is it seems to eliminate a lot of people's symptoms. Rheumatoid arthritis, proud joints go away, autoimmune disorders. Jordan Peterson talks about it all the time. All he eats is steak now, and all of his autoimmune disorders have gone away. He's lost weight. He has more energy, blah, blah, blah.
And it probably even does better the more raw you eat it. More rare.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Rare, raw. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You and I come from that camp, the Agenus Vonda planets camp.
Yeah.
So, but the interesting thing about the carnivore diet is it basically eliminates all Akkermansia, which flies in the face of how does it make people thin? How does it get all this stuff to happen? And it eliminates this good bacteria. What do you think?
I think it's because it doesn't matter how you lower insulin as long as you do it. If you, I mean, again, every bit of food we're taking in, think of it like firewood. Every bit of food we take in creates heat. The more heat you create, the more damage you do to your machine. So one of the benefits of being on a carnivore diet is it's so energy dense that you don't need a lot of it to have plenty. And so and because there's no grain, there's no carbohydrate almost, or very, very little.
Right.
You don't need insulin. So since you don't need insulin, you don't make as much insulin. The lower insulin means lower inflammation. The first time this new medicine I was talking about, Mounjaro, the first week we had it out, and what it is, it's a single polypeptide that activates both the GLP-1 and the GIP receptor. It is the only medication on earth that replaces both incretins right now. And the first week we had it, I put a guy on it and he lost 30 pounds in 1 week. Now,
are you kidding me?
Serious. 20 of it was water, but that wasn't the point. The point was this guy went from being someone who had no hope, who didn't feel that he could do anything behaviorally to help his weight or his health, to suddenly he is like an animal now. He'll do whatever diet, whatever, because he's seen the effects. Nothing motivates like success.
Yes.
And incretin-based therapies are going to be the way we get out of, if we're going to get out of the diabetes, pandemic that we're in for that. Incretins are going to be a part of it, and Akkermansia is going to be a part of it. Whether you're taking that as a probiotic or as metformin or as your good supplements to help build them up. But if you're eating in such a way that you don't need a lot of insulin, you can have some dysbiosis and be fine. That's one of the reasons the low carb diets are so good, is they're very forgiving. You don't have to have a lot of other things perfectly right for it to benefit you. And it's not because we're all built to eat that way and nothing else. It's that we can eat a lot of different ways. But if the way you've been eating has you unhealthy, change it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And that's what happens when when people we're so tribal now. People eat a certain diet because their friends eat it, and not because it makes them feel better or healthier. That's fascinating.
Exactly.
Well, this has really been great, and we covered a lot of ground today. That's amazing. Would you mind telling me what you're using as far as an Akkermansia supplement? Because I want to go pick something up and try using it.
Sure. Yeah, I'm using a supplement. Let me look up the name of it right now because I don't want to give everybody a wrong impression. And I'm not saying this one because I know it's the best. It's just one that I tried. And I intend to try several different ones. And I trust the way my body's going to respond as an indicator, of what's a good fit. But still loading here. It's a purple bottle, and it just says Akkermansia on the front. I think it is.
Is it Pendulum?
Yep, I think that's it. Pendulum. Yep, that's the one I'm taking.
That's the really popular one right now, Pendulum.
Yeah. And so far, I've got me and my kids on it, and everybody's taking it, tolerating it well, no tolerability issues. But that one does at least claim some data that suggests that it will be viable and we'll get some good changes in our gut bacteria.
And lastly, how do you pronounce it? Anjaro? What's the new drug?
Manjaro. Yeah, this is it's an agent. It's a medication indicated for type 2 diabetes, but it is quickly becoming the #1 weight medicine on earth. And what's exciting about it for you and me is that it's working by HRT. All it is putting back 2 hormones actions that we are all supposed to have there, the absence of which is what makes us hungry. And remember, it only takes 100 extra calories a day. That's 1 pat of butter divided between 3 meals to put 10 pounds a year on you. The actual miracle is your average American eats around 1 million calories a year. And a lot of years, their weight doesn't change a pound. Right. That's how tightly controlled that system is. You go losing 2 of the major regulatory hormones. Of course, you're not going to be able to keep your weight right, no matter how hard you try. If we got a kid and they're in school and they get a 90 on a test, we tell them, great job, you get an A. You got 9 out of 10 right. So my patients, they're walking around and they're saying no to an urge to eat 9 out of 10 times. But what if they get that urge 30 times a day? And they said no 27 times. Great job. Couldn't expect them to do better. But that 3 times they listened and had 30 extra calories, they're putting 10 pounds a year on. The answer to this is not behavioral. It's chemical.
So are there any unwanted effects of this drug? Because I know GLP-1, a lot of people complain that it makes them nauseous. They don't feel like eating.
One of the jobs of GLP-1 and GIP is to slow gastric emptying. So if in your system, when you take this medicine, that aspect itself you're very sensitive to, you could get a fair bit of nausea. What's nice is that people really get tolerance to that effect typically very quickly, but they do not get tolerance to the beneficial effects on appetite and blood sugar. So as they start to get, basically what happens is the medicine helps you make insulin right when you eat, which helps you fix your sugar, and then the insulin can go away and stay away. If you don't make enough when you eat, then you get this wussy little release of insulin that doesn't fix your sugar. Then you have to continue making insulin all day long to try to correct it. And every hour insulin is present in your bloodstream is another hour you are not going to lose weight no matter how hard you try.
Interesting. And so you take it daily? You take it before a meal? How is it?
It's a long half-life, once a week injection. Wow. And like I said, it's indicated for diabetes, but we're just seeing people who have weight to lose within diabetes doing it, getting some amazing results.
That's fascinating. Dr. Matt Andry, thank you for being here today. And this has been a really great discussion. We have to do more of this again.
Absolutely. I really appreciate what you do. I don't think you understand how valuable this is, because there are simply not sources out there for people to find real information by people who sincerely just want to help. And you provide that. And I'm incredibly grateful to you for that.
Thanks, Matt. We'll talk soon. I promise.
All right.
And that's it for today. I think we do have a show tomorrow, Matt. So Rob Regish is taking some time off because he is a little burnt out, and so tomorrow we do have a show. No, I don't know. I don't know if it's not on my calendar here, but I believe we do have a show tomorrow. But Matt, Rob will be coming back. He'll be coming back very soon. He just has to recharge his batteries. But don't forget, share the show. We'll see you when we see you. And don't forget, muscle is metabolic currency. So get into the gym and make a deposit today. See you later.